Hi, I'm Michael Levine. I score Cold Case. I was a session player in New York. At that time, I was doing a lot of work in the advertising world, and I went to every single jingle house in New York and said, will you hire me? And they all were like, eh. And so then I just decided to go straight to the advertising agencies. And interestingly enough, I started getting work from advertising agencies. And about 10 years ago, I decided that I had had enough of that world and the advertising world, and decided that I really wanted to work in a little longer format than 30 seconds. And decided to move from New York, where I was living at the time, here to Los Angeles and pursue film and television music. We are now in our 6th season, so 5 complete years and part of a 6th. I have scored every episode that has aired since the first one. There are a number of differences between writing for a feature film score and for an episodic television series. There are also a number of differences depending upon the scale of the feature film, how things are done. But the first and most obvious difference is that there's a difference in the amount of time that you have. Typically, feature, you have many weeks or months, and typically for a television show you have a week or 10 days. 10 days is luxurious. It can be as few as 2 or 3 days if it's a crunch. And so the process is different as a result. One other important distinction between film and television that isn't necessarily obvious is that film is a visual medium. Television is a dialogue medium. And it partly has to do with the size of the formats, but it also has to do with the theatrical conventions that have evolved as a result of those formats. And your job as a composer is to help tell the story, whatever way that works. And that means you are usually trying to get inside of the characters or inside of something that can't be expressed any other way. But the mechanics of doing that are very different when you have lots of space with no dialogue and big, beautiful pictures versus when there's a lot of talking and everything is close frame. There are different kinds of approaches you have to use when there's a lot of dialogue. You have to be very aware of what sonic elements are going to conflict with important consonants. To get technical about it, certain kinds of percussive sounds you have to be very careful about. And how you handle a pulse is oftentimes got to be carefully thought of. Cold Case, I'm always going very low and very high to make room in the middle for the dialogue, and I think that's fairly typical of situations where people have to compose for dialogue. Now, to change gears, people often ask me if there's a distinctive instrument that I use in my recording, and I would say that probably the most distinctive one, or the most signature to me, is the tenor violin. And people say, you might be looking at this, say, well, what's so different about this? Because this looks like a violin, except that that's an octave lower than a violin. And so it has this beautiful space that's somewhere between a viola and a cello in terms of range, but because the body is the size of a violin, it has a kind of funky, folky sound to it.